So, Giovanna, what's your feeling about what happened last week with the auctions?
So we had multiple auctions, Judith. We had a very packed week with sales, different sales, very diverse. It's a diverse composition, incredibly modern. 2 estates, also very different from one another. A solid evening sale and interesting and very different also day sales. One of them, the day sale of Impressionist and Modern, led by another collection sale, that of the Surrealist group of the Jacobs family, which performed incredibly well. So I would say that we can say that all the estates did extremely well. In general, it was a very, very buoyant week. In general, I think we've seen incredible results. But clearly, as always, and this is a mantra that continues to be affirmed again and again, provenance is king. Provenance is so important. Works that are fresh to the market and have never been seen, for which there is a little bit of a cult and expectation, and also there is a lot of pent-up energy after 2 years of pandemic for these kind of properties.
So it means you had some disappointment from pieces which didn't have a good origin?
No, actually, to be honest, we had surprises and no disappointment everywhere. To be honest, and I want to be frank with you, it has been a lot of work. It's not a market that comes by itself. Estimates have to be correct and perceived as reasonable or not conservative, but not aggressive. So there is definitely an atmosphere which is careful, attentive, full of professionals that know what they're doing. But once the rooms were alight, you saw it yourself, you probably saw them, the chase was amazing for every piece.
But I noticed, for example, in the Aman collections that a good polka was not sold. I noticed that one good Jeff Koons was sold for very much lower price than before. What do you think about that?
There were occasional and very, very punctual casualties. But I would say that still the percentages sold, and I'm not kind of like, being rhetorical. I don't have a langue de bois here. The percentages sold have been astonishing. A lot of works have actually had multiple bidders. There is depth of bidding. So yes, as in every season, we had moments where we couldn't reach the reserve.
Yeah.
But I'm not seeing at all this season as a catalyst for a correction in the market.
Okay. So no correction for Jeff Koons?
Well, that's a market that has been, quite, I would say, idiosyncratic for a while, with prices that can go incredibly high. And we had, the Rabbit not so long ago, which is still, a memory. It's set in stone in my mind because it was such a wonderful result recently, and other works, from other series that are not so strong. But for every artist, it's the same. I would say that Picasso has the same story narrative. There are some works and periods that are just exploding, and other that limp through, and it depends a lot on what the expectations of the seller are.
Okay, and because we are in a very special period, and now in Asia, above all in China, everything is locked down. In Russia, there's a war. So what's the effect of this bad news on the art market?
There was much more Asia than we expected. There was basically no Russia. There was no Russia. There's no way around it. We have been incredibly lenient and serious with the sanctions. So clearly that had an impact in terms of not on the general results of the auctions, but on the presence of Russian buyers in the auctions. And I'm very clear with you. In terms of Asia.
No, I didn't hear anything. You said what? Sorry, there was a silence. About Russia, what did happen when you said?
We didn't have Russian buyers. We cannot have Russian buyers. We're very serious and very careful with the restrictions that are being imposed on us. And, when, clearly there are sanctions, as you know, and we adhere to the regulations and compliance very strictly. So that clearly had consequences in terms of Russian presence in these sales, indeed.
What about China?
China, and you know that there are different Asian markets. Judith, we probably discussed this before. We can generally talk about 3 Asian markets. I'm generalizing, but there is Hong Kong, there is Taiwan, Southeast Asia, and there is mainland China. All 3 of them were present in different ways. And all 3 of them were present in the sales. Mainland China, we were lucky enough to be able to have in presence, physically there, our colleague Tambo from Beijing. She made it to the sales. She will now have to quarantine going back, but she made it just before they made it very difficult to leave China. So she had a visa, she could come, she was there 10 days before the sales, and she's been instrumental. And I believe in physical presence in the sales at this stage, because she was really in every interest meeting, ramming up.
The mood is not at all about buying. It's not only about representative. It's also about buyers. They are locked down in China. They don't know about the future, not even about their money and how they can take out the money from China. So it's an atmosphere of anxiety. So it's very difficult to imagine that Chinese are going to buy for large amount of money. No? Well,
they did. They came. If you saw it, we had if you go back and see again, of course they continue to buy in the areas they're comfortable with. We didn't expect any major Asian buying in Amman because it's very European and, a very particular moment, the 80s, with artists that, were there to Thomas and Doris that don't really talk to the Asian market. What talks to the Asian market is the usual brands, Picasso, Monet, but also Balthus. So if you look at what they bought, Tambo fought very hard for the Balthus in the Bass collection and won it. Way above the high estimate. We had Imogen in Hong Kong bidding at $12 million on and buying it for an Asian collector on a Monet, which came from Paris. These are big numbers as they used to be. There was Asian interest everywhere in Bass, and that typically is exactly the area where they continue to show interest. Classic Impressionism, big brand names, and selectively contemporary. If you look at the contemporary sale on the Tuesday night, the 21st century, the Asian buying is insane. Basically, it's only Asian buying and bidding. Jackie, Evelyn in Hong Kong, they are buying pretty much everything.
Everything like what?
Like Jadeh Fadejutimi, like Matthew Wong, Sarah Hughes, Salman To, Anna Weyand, Kondo, Fisher. They were bidding on every single one of them. Eventually, maybe didn't succeed in buying, but if you replay the sale, there is a lot of presence of Hong Kong. And Hong Kong, of course, represents not only Hong Kong, they represent they represent Taiwan, they represent Singapore, they represent Malaysia, and they were very, very present. But this is typical.
For the Art Now auction, how many percent of Asia was participating, you think?
I don't have that number yet because I want to give you a number for the whole week, and it's been calculated. Because as I said, we had multiple sales, so 3 evening sales, 2-day sales, 1 other collection. And what we would like to do at this point is a percentage that covers the whole week with all the buyers across them. And I'll come back to you with that so you can add it to the blog.
Okay, super. And so I would like to speak about some very precise work like Petite Danseuse de 14 ans.
Yes.
It was a huge prize, right?
It was a fantastic price. It's a record price for the sculpture. Absolutely. It's at $36 million. It's really, that's a hammer price, of course. So it's more with a premium. It's exceptional. It was an incredible cast. Do you want to know why it went so far? What is your angle here?
Yes.
Okay, well, first of all, bath. I think that was irresistible. Everything was so exquisite. I think it's the best of America. It's when America is elegant and pared down and classic. And the apartment was absolutely curated. You know, I don't like to use this term, it's a bit abused, but we can say this. She collected very selectively and she created atmospheres of suspension, magic, nostalgia. And her entry hall had La Petite Danseuse, the Balthus, and the Hammershøi. So clearly there is a theme of
the Balthus and what's
the Hammershøi, which is the record prize for the artist too.
Ah.
These were the three works that were in the entry hall to the apartment. So La Petite Danseuse was also, I think, in the subconscious of a lot of very rich American collectors who loved it, you know, identified with the apartment. It was the welcoming bid. It was what people associated with Anne as well. She was a dancer herself. She donated a lot to the Met for dance. That was always her dream. She was a documentarist about dance, as you know. So it embodied very much, I think it encapsulated her essence. And I think that had an enormous impact. Also, the object itself was incredible because the patina was bronze and brown. The muslin skirt was the most the closest to the original, and it's a very good cast in 1927. So the cast was exceptional. We decided not to travel it for multiple reasons because we wanted to preserve it in terms of it's not a fragile cast, it's bronze, but still we didn't want to risk it.
But you had a system of hologram, no?
Exactly. So we traveled it, and also we want to start really walk the walk and talk the talk, and so start really putting our action into place in terms of getting to net zero. So when we have this machine that created the perfect idea of it, if you stood in front of it, you had the whole dance
in the real size.
In the real size, exactly in the real size, with the wooden plinth that Anne Bass had made for it, which is actually wonderful, and it goes with the chocolatey brown patina of the sculpture, and that really helped people in LA, people in London, who were then advising the people who eventually bought it.
Do you give the nationality of the people who bought it?
No, we don't, I'm afraid.
Dommage.
Dommage.
And wasn't there any disappointment for the Warhol?
No, I don't think so. I think that what we did was astonishing. There was a sense of pride of having accomplished that amount, of having delivered that amount, of having done well for the estate. $195 million, it's the most expensive price ever paid for a 20th century work of art. We always were trying to get to that number, and we did. But
you were planning for a better number, like 200, which is symbolically huge, no?
I think that 195 or 200, when we're talking about 5 million difference at this level, the air is very thin, and we're delighted with the result. 200 was a guidance. This is where the expectations of the estate and ours were, and the fact that we achieved it were, it's really testament to a very, very good marketing campaign, believing in the object, understanding the rarity of it, and working very close with the estate throughout the process. These were people that were revered. Thomas and Doris were icons of sophistication.
I wrote about it. I even asked a lot of.
Oh, and you wrote a fantastic article because you went back to the article in Vanity Fair, and I thought that was such a genius move on your part, because it prompted me to go back to it. You know, I'm not being sycophantic, but you're the only one who went back to that article. And Edmund White is such a great writer, and I adore Edmund White. I read everything that he wrote. The fact that he did the profile and there was such a connection. I mean, there is a very sad moment in the profile. I don't know if you reread it, recently, but when he said, after the sale, because he says, it really stopped me in my track when he says that a man says, I'm going to be very big at some point. I'm going to be even bigger. I will continue to be bigger. And this is in the 80s, and of course he dies, So there is no prescience of what's going to happen afterwards. So to me, in a sense, this is the big thing that we did for him. What he's saying in the article that, nobody could.
Yeah. I think it was even fascinating to write about him. But your feeling is that what's going on in the world, which is very make people very anxious all over the world, is not affecting the art market for now?
Well, it doesn't seem so. I mean, definitely what is happening in the world is of great concern to every single one of us. It's of great concern to me, and you. Decidedly, people are stopping in their tracks and taking stock and thinking much more than in November. I mean, in November, there was a sense of euphoria coming out of the pandemic, of hope, and then suddenly there was a war, and then there is crazy inflation, and then, a lot of worries. So we are in a different place, but this week didn't show any sign of a rest in the market, in the art market.
Okay, merci beaucoup. Giovanna, thank you. Thanks a lot.